So, hello and welcome to another episode of Bang for Your Business with me, your host, James Bernay. I'm delighted to say that joining us today is Raoul Shah, founder, CEO of creative communications agency Exposure. Raoul, hi, how are you?
Hi, James. I'm very well. Nice to see you.
Coping with lockdown?
Losing track of days, but to be honest, I got to say I'm starting to sort of really enjoy the benefits of the things I'm learning and what I'm sort of, starting to extract from the initial shock and difficulty of it. So yeah, coping so far so good.
Yeah, fantastic. Can we just start with a little bit of history and information just about Exposure and who your typical client is?
Sure. So as you sort of correctly described us as at the beginning, we're a creative communications agency. I started the company in 1993. I'd spent 5 years after university working at Pepe Jeans, where as a sort of challenger brand against the three sort of dominant American brands, being Levi's, Lee and Wrangler, we were sort of the upstart British denim brand that was sort of doing things differently and doing things generally without the sort of budgets of the big American brands. So I learned a lot about sort of DIY marketing perhaps at Pepe. And so when I started Exposure, I started at a time when Pepe was being sold. My job was, I had a job at Pepe, but marketing had been frozen. So I think I was sort of to some extent, I was on furlough actually. I was sort of there I was trying to do a job, but not asked to do anything really except collect a check. So I thought it was time to move on, and using the connections and some of the things I'd learned at Pepe, I thought the first place to sort of perhaps experiment with trying to run my own business was, would be at clubs, to bring people together in nightclubs who have a sort of shared interest predominantly in music, and to see what you could do by forging connections with people, between people from different backgrounds. And out of that came what was, and still to this day is a client. Our first client was Converse. I'd met somebody at the club, lady who was a marketing director of Converse, and she had said to me, how do we get people who I see at your club to wear Converse? We need someone to help us place product on the feet of these people. And that was really the foundation of what became now an agency that is, we're headquartered here in London. We have an office in New York. We also have a small office in Paris. We employ about 300 people. We're still very proudly independent. And we work for a whole range of brands, ranging from, Converse, I've mentioned, Coca-Cola, Nike, Levi's, Uniqlo, Lego, Microsoft, Samsung. But there's another side to that client base, which is, as impressive as it is and as privileged as we are to work with some amazing brands, we have always believed, and I've always really firmly believed in supporting small, creatively led independent businesses. So we have a great roster of clients, many of whom most people wouldn't have heard of, but that we've always worked with and will continue to work with and treat as equally as we do with the big kind of global brands. So it's a broad sort of lifestyle and consumer portfolio of brands. And I guess I always say to people, one of the brilliant things about going to work and working with the clients we work for is that they're all brands that we all actually personally have an affinity for.
I was going to say that you started that with clubs. You sort of living your life, and it's got that brand affinity. And coming back to the Pepe thing, the young upstart company, it feels like you're continuing that spirit through to today.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's maybe one of the long-term lessons I've learned, because I think at the beginning I had no background or even business plan or qualification to start a business. I think I fell into it, and then over time realized that the things that work best were generally defined by a few sort of common factors. One was sort of doing things that I loved. The second was sort of doing things with people I wanted to work with, be it friends or people who then became friends. And of course, working in sectors and with brands that I had also an interest in. So, unless it was really keeping me awake at night, it probably, didn't get me out of bed early in the early days when I didn't have much to do anyway. But so I'm very fortunate. I always think going to work for me every day is an absolute, you know, I pinch myself. It's a privilege because I love what we do and who we work with and who we do our work for.
And you clearly have a passion for it, which is a wonderful thing. You mentioned the Converse, that's obviously one, but are there any other sort of game change, the Converse conversation in the club, but are there any other game changing moments for Exposure or yourself?
Yeah, I think the sort of, I guess over the timeline of the agency, who's now sort of 27 years old, the things that stick out most, clearly beyond the sort of trust we got from a fantastic brand right from the beginning, you know, winning Levi's in 1999, that was pretty incredible. You know, we were an agency of 15 people pitching against some of the biggest networked agencies in Europe. And at the time, we had made the decision that we would fly every single member of the agency, including our receptionist, to Brussels for the pitch to try and show them that not only did we have firepower, but if they were prepared to give us a chance, we would throw everybody and the kitchen sink at the business, and we won it. And you know, we still work with Levi's 20 years on. I mean, the first probably big game-changing moment was when my business partner Tim joined me in 1997, and he was a friend who I'd met during my time at Pepe Jeans, but you know, we had spent more time sort of going to clubs together and sort of shared a passion for sort of similar music and club culture. And I always remember when I started Exposure, he'd sort of come to see me about a few little projects that he was trying to get some help on. And I remember turning to him one day and said, just why don't we just work together? And it was kind of as simple as that. And you know, that the simplicity of the idea, and then the desire to have a business partner and go, if we work together, then we become partners. So you just take half the company. I think today nobody really even thinks like that, because everyone's always wondering why would they do that, and what do they get, and who gives them more or who brings less, or all that stuff. So anyway, we got together and we've had pretty much the same set of values and principles from day one to today. And we don't, you know, we complement each other perfectly. We seem to align on the right things, and we go off and do what we do, and you know, here we are. So that was game changing. As I said, Levi's was, Converse was, and we've been, you know, we've set up some businesses along the way which have been interesting. You know, we have a beauty business called Scene, a group now of companies focused on well-being and beauty. And what else? I mean, Coca-Cola was interesting for us because we were given a sort of project from Coke very early on. This is in about 2000. No, actually, it was in the late 90s, and they had asked us to find a way to put some energy around their glass bottle, which in that era was clearly the icon of the brand, and yet it was a very impractical product. You know, it was heavy to transport. It was made of glass, which didn't really work in the way bars were being designed at the time. People wanted things that were quick to pour. And they were actually thinking about sort of phasing it out of distribution in the UK. And they said, you know, come do something to kind of give us a reason to keep that bottle front and center. And we started working with fashion designers who started designing the sort of outer, almost sort of skin of the bottle, and did the bottle collaborations that went on to become a sort of series for 20 years. So, you know, we're lucky. We've been given permission and trust from people, particularly through an era when I was only sort of running on instinct. You know, I had no kind of research, no, you know, decks to prove why things worked, and the measurement was ultimately measured at the consumer end. When things sort of worked, they worked because they were either seen in media, or they were selling out of stores, or they was distribution visibility. Things like the Coke bottles was going, you know, was sort of proving that it was working. But we never had anything in the middle to prove that it was worth doing until we got to the end.
It's interesting. You talk about trust and trust of your clients, but the story you were telling me about yourself and Tim joining up, I mean, that whole relationship's built on trust. And as you say, it's sounds like you haven't looked back, you know, since that big change that you made.
No, and I think, you know, it's interesting having this conversation today, because, you know, whilst, you know, nearly everybody has been going through their version of some kind of isolation and sort of lockdown, I think, you know, when you start really looking into yourself, and we've all, I'd hope, have had moments where we've actually been able to take time out from whatever we're doing indoors to think about ourselves, our purpose, our families. You know, you realize that you're probably most comfortable when you can just have those sort of trusted people, the family, the friends, the contacts. They don't have to be the closest friends, but people who you have trust with, which is the bond that I found over the last 65 days has kept me closest to people who aren't just defined, as I said, by sort of long-term friendship, of which, you know, I value hugely, as well as family, but people who you just trust, and you kind of want to have that dialogue, which I think will be something we'll take forward with us, you know, and I will certainly.
It's interesting. It's when you don't have something. I was thinking when I go traveling, I appreciate things about home, and I think the 65 days you say, when you don't have something, I think you really appreciate it more.
Yeah, I think when you have, you know, when something's taken out that we almost continually take for granted, and something is suddenly absent, you know, you either don't think about it because you then realize it wasn't that important, or you suddenly kind of figure out how you can reintroduce and find another way to continue to have that connection or experience. And I find that sometimes sitting here at home, I'm thinking, there's a lot of stuff here over the last 30, 40 years of collecting various things. You sort of go, I mean, not that I needed any of it at the beginning, but how much of it do we need? And, you know, where in the future, what are the priorities? You know, going shopping definitely doesn't seem to be the sort of first thing I want to do when I leave here. No. It's actually just taking some of these conversations and connections into the real world. For me, that would be fantastic. That would be enough.
So right now, quite difficult times currently. Other than right now, what difficult times or problems have you been through at Exposure, and how did you deal with those things?
We've had we've definitely had our fair share of tough times, and I guess all businesses do in varying degrees. I mean, we are such a, you know, we have such a sort of strong culture around our business in terms of the people and our passion for the sort of clients we work with and the relationship we forge between clients and sort of culture between, you know, brands and fashion, or brands and music and art. I think the toughest things for us tend to be sort of rooted in challenges with people, actually.
Right.
Because we have a very flat structure. We're very democratic. We're very inclusive. We give as much responsibility and more to people. You know, we want people to be entrepreneurial. You know, we have no fear of people saying, one day I'm going to leave and set my own business up. But then it doesn't always go that way. You know, people have their own ideas. And so, you know, it's been tough when you lose good people that you've worked with for many years, and then suddenly one day they're off. And that's difficult. Not that we've always imagined everyone stays forever, but it's the circumstances around how people move on. I think America was tough. We opened in 2003 in LA. Then we moved the office and started our East Coast agency in New York in 2005. That was tough because we had agreed that we would only risk a certain amount of money against that operation, because over and above that, we would put the whole business at risk and go out of business. And I genuinely think we were at our last $500. And it was really, really, the stress of it wasn't about can we carry on. It was about the idea of losing all that money, even though we had agreed we would be prepared to lose it and then withdraw.
Walk away.
And we were very lucky. You know, we didn't, you know, we held our nerve, actually, and we didn't walk away at the last 500. We kind of bet the last 500 and were lucky with some work that came in, and that fueled the, you know, growth of the business. I think the other thing is that, you know, the lessons that we've learned around, and when we've been going through tough times, it's often through just when you learn through failure. And the failures that we've had have certainly taught me that it's best to sort of figure out what lane you're in and figure out how you can stay in that lane. You know, as a business that covers a lot of areas, a lot of sectors, a lot of disciplines, you work in different markets, it's easy to start thinking, well, you can just, you know, let's go and open an office in Amsterdam, and let's get into automotive, or let's, you know, but actually we know where we're good and we know where we can apply what we know to other sectors, but we can't become overnight experts in other sectors. So we've made a lot of mistakes by thinking we can. And that's been tough because you realize that you can't do everything. Not everyone can be the complete athlete like Michael Jordan.
You mentioned losing staff. I think that's always an issue for a lot of businesses. But I know a lot of your ex-staff have gone on to run businesses, a number of them. I think that speaks volumes for your business, for the culture in your business, in terms of, you mentioned that the flat structure, and the senior management team of giving people the belief that they're going to do that. So I think it's a pro and a con, isn't it? It's a challenge when they go, but it's a wonderful thing that you turn around and say, actually, we were a big part in developing these people to go on and do really special things elsewhere.
And I think everyone that's maybe embarking on their own career or starting their own business has a responsibility the minute you employ one person.
Yeah.
For that person. And it's not, I don't take it lightly. So for me to see people go on and do whatever they go on to do just makes me realize that what we're doing is worthwhile. You know, we are giving people whatever we're giving them, however small or much, whether they meet someone at work and they go off and do something with that person, or they get experience, or for me, it's spiritually, you've got to put a lot out there, and you know, you don't expect it all to come back. But what you do is you start creating much more kind of good out in the marketplace. And, you know,
Absolutely.
we work in an industry where I want more people pushing us, challenging us, competing against us, so that the quality of what we all do just gets better.
Absolutely. So just talking about specific situations now, the situation we're in, how are you adapting as a business, and what measures are you putting into place right now to cope with the current situation?
I mean, adapting has been quite an incredible sort of experience for everybody, because we weren't given any kind of pre-warning. You don't, you know, it's not like preparing to sort of deliver your best mate's wedding speech and you've got some time to prepare. You just overnight, it was like, this is how it's going to be, figure it out. So, you know, adapting as an organization needed a few very immediate steps. First, we had to figure out how to manage the just simple economics of running a company where almost 50% of our revenue disappeared overnight. And 50% of the revenue drop doesn't just mean you sort of have to shed 50% of your staff. Of course, things like the furlough scheme have helped. You know, you've got to restructure every little bit of it, because you've still got certain clients who are working with you. And actually, a lot of the reduction in revenue wasn't clients just walking out the door. It was just them reducing their investment with us. So that was very complicated, and it needed very, you know, we had a lot of people in the business who had to make big and brave decisions and then confront very difficult conversations with clients saying, look, this is what we're going to do, and it's going to affect, you know, we're affected, it's going to affect you, it's going to affect everyone, but together we can probably get our, you know, find our way through this.
Yeah.
So initially, I think just speed of adapting was relentless. It was really, really exhausting. And there was no time to sort of figure out if anything was right or wrong. You just had to keep going until you could wake up one morning and go, right, now I'm not trying to reorganize the structure. Now I need to figure out whether the structure we've got, in its sort of disparate nature, given that we're so kind of connected as people in the buildings or in the way we work, suddenly you've got to figure out how you then make it work. And what we realized is that speed became the key for us. You know, clients were not asking for anything that required, you know, well, firstly, there was no meeting protocol. There was no kind of like, let's pitch to week 1 and return week 3. And it was like, I need this tomorrow. You know, Levi's, Lego, Converse, Brewdog. I mean, they were all asking for very, very fast thinking. And what we did sort of realized and then packaged up was we created a product. We created a 3-day, what we called a 3-day agency sprint, where something that would have historically have taken 3 or 4 weeks, we offered clients. It's called day 1. And we said to clients, this is what we can do in 3 days. We put sort of 5 or 6 of the best people in the agency onto your client challenge, and we'll give you a solution. You know, we've had one client in particular who gave us a brief on a Monday, solution on a Thursday, and we put a campaign together the following Monday. And that's a true story, which we will reveal soon, because we're about to go live with a product for someone, you know, who a lot of people will know when it goes live. So that's been one of the many sort of adaptive strategies. I think the other thing is just creating lots and lots of small content pieces for people who are suddenly not able to walk into the building and sort of immerse themselves in our world. So how can they do that? And we've created lots of short, easy to digest knowledge pieces. We've got this thing called exposure homework that we share with clients every 2 weeks. We have a daily Casbar, which is a group above Exposure. The Casbar is our holding company, and the Casbar daily newsletter covers 6 or 7 of the most interesting campaigns that emerged the day before, and we share one every single day to show clients what other people are doing. And then finally, we're just doing very kind of informal, raw, unedited sort of talks. And I think, again, what Tim and me have constantly said to everyone is that it's a great time to share knowledge and just put it out there. Whether people listen or want it doesn't matter. It's just good to try and take some of the wisdom that we've been kind of building and storing up for all these years and just put it out in the public domain.
So your clients, generally, you said the revenue reduced. You said they want things yesterday, immediately.
Yeah.
What sort of things? I mean, without giving too much away, we don't want to pry too much. But what sort of things would a typical client have been asking you to do during this particular period? As you said earlier, we've had no warning. There's no one's had any preparation for this, because we saw this coming, didn't we? In January and February, but even early March, if we were to say to each other, this is going to happen, you'd have said, no, that's not going to happen. And here we are. So what would a typical client have?
Typical example is Brewdog. So Brewdog, operate 100 plus pubs in the UK, and overnight business went, the lights were turned off. And our digital team came up with a fantastic mechanic, which was around turning them into virtual pubs.
Right.
So we effectively bring the pub to you. You can get the beer and the product delivered to you. You can engage with people as you would in the pub, but on screen. Clearly, there was not such a sort of fatigue around Zoom and video conferencing on day 1, and there probably wasn't on day 30. I think we're all a little bit tired now, screen time. But at the beginning, it was like a very novel way to suddenly recreate the same, to some degree, without the physicality, the same environment. We have announced on Friday last week, as part of the Meerkat music program for Compare the Market, next week's reunion of Take That, which includes Robbie Williams. They're playing live from their homes, each of 4 members of the band that remain. They're performing at 8 o'clock next Friday, and that was something that we launched earlier this week, and that's been incredibly well received.
Wow.
We'll be beaming that onto people's screens next week. And then, like I said, this sort of sprint process around trying to solve problems for clients very quickly. And this, new product that we've applied it to, which I mentioned, it's a really interesting product in the alcohol sector. It's a high-end pre-mixed cocktail in a can. That's about all I will tell you now, but that's going live within, I would say within a month.
Right.
And, I think digital and social strategies, thinking, and clearly aptitude in terms of implementation has been very key. And that's always been a big part of our business. But depending on what part of our journey you sort of came on board, you might have a very different view about what Exposure is and what we do. So some people think we're a very sort of analog PR, events, product placement agency. But then there are other people who don't know we do any of that stuff. So other people think we work just solely in fashion, but actually we have thankfully, a very strong digital business and a very strong business.
You've adapted your business, haven't you, as time has gone on?
And that's going to grow clearly very, very fast as it is now. And the other part is our brand reputation business. So we have an agency in the group called 360 who work on reputation, and they've had, they've been very busy because there's been a huge amount of corporate sort of perception, reputation management, just CEO statements being issued on a very regular basis that the team have had to advise clients on. So there's lots and lots of good that we're starting to see in terms of what we've learned, and the spotlight that's been put on the strongest parts of our business that will now, no doubt, hopefully continue to get stronger.
How do you stay positive in times like this?
That's well, I mean, you know me quite well, very well, I would even say. I'm a natural optimist. I find it very hard to sort of see why something isn't going to work out. I generally think that, I sort of see the good and hope that I don't have to be shown why there's bad to find in people. I genuinely mean that as an individual. That's how I sort of see the world. But I mean, really, my recent, I guess in the last sort of 2.5, 3 months, I'm I love my music. I definitely escape into music, and I've discovered tons of music that I normally wouldn't have had even time to do. So that's been a great leveler. I've been, doing, I hope, what a lot of other people have been doing, which is just getting out and using the time that we are given to go out and, run and cycle. I think there's a lot to be said about having the silence. You were talking about earlier about this, when things are sort of taken out and there's that sort of vacuum. I've kind of tried to make the most of some of those vacuum moments to really look into myself a bit and think harder about the sort of value sets and the beliefs and the things that got me here. And as a friend of ours, often, I think he's got it on his email sign off, he says, I didn't get this far just to get this far. And I often think that there's always something more to go after. Yeah. And I think out of all of these challenging times, there's got to be good. I mean, when I read things in the papers about the drop in pollution levels and, the parks come to life without all the people trampling over everything. I mean, there's a load of stuff that for me just fills me with positive belief and optimism, actually. I just, the other thing, by the way, actually, to finish answering the question is the other people. You've got to take the energy of other people and share the difficult times and learn how to pull yourself out of them, and other people help you do that.
Yeah, very much so. And that, I guess, goes with a message you have for other businesses.
I mean, never be afraid to ask for help first and foremost. There's no single person is going to be able to solve everything, and the collective energy and strength of a good team and advisors and mentors and being ready to say, I don't know how to do this, or I've screwed this up. That's important. I think, you've got to have the sort of humility and kind of keep your windows open and your, arms open to receive, because, that's probably the way you can build on whatever it is that you singularly are brilliant at. You've got to kind of remember and figure out, as I said earlier, what lane you want to be in and what your expertise is, and then figure out how you surround yourself with all the other people that can help you get to that destination.
You've talked quite a few of your clients, and your history is in the world of fashion, and specifically that business. How do you think that's going to change after lockdown and when things get up and running again? How do you think that's going to change that industry?
I think across a lot of industries, but particularly fashion, I think that the need for people to take a much more responsible approach to what they consume, the provenance of where the things they consume, where they come from, how they're made, the working practices. I mean, I think there's a lot more work that the industry has to do, and that maybe consumers will have to impose upon the industry around, making good choices. I think we need to we need to buy better, we need to buy less, we need to buy better quality, we need to support independent businesses. I think in fashion, which is a very fragmented business at one end of the scale, and then a very big global, so monolithic structure at the other, I think we have a responsibility to support independent businesses, young creative individuals who, without us making conscious decisions to support them and therefore buy their products, are going to go out of business. So, big high street chains that are, perhaps at the fast fashion end of the scale, have, I think, some very difficult times ahead, if I'm honest, because unless it's ethical, sustainable, responsible, and it's done well, and companies come with really, really transparent, clear-cut values, I think it's, consumers are probably not going to be as motivated to want to just spend on anything. And so, I think that is, a big part of what's happening across industries, actually.
I think it comes back
consciousness.
Sorry to interrupting you. I think it comes back to what you were saying about the reputational management as well, the 360 division that you have, and linking back into that. I think you're absolutely right. There are so many businesses that they've got to change. This situation has forced them to change and prove that actually things will work doing another way. And I think you're right. Going back to the way it used to be isn't an option.
And it's a simple over sort of quoted statement, but change is good. I mean, seismic change of this scale, maybe not every year. Thank you very much. Once in a lifetime is okay, but change is good. And I think when you have everybody in the same position, we're all confronted by the same challenges. No one gets exempt, or there's no discrimination between what we've all gone through and will continue to go through. So there is a huge opportunity that will come out of what we've just I hope come out of healthier and better, which is that we have to sort of take the learnings of the last few months and change not everything, but there are lots of things that could do with improvement and alternative ways to go about doing things, whether that's consumption, whether it's how we choose to travel, how we choose to work, where we choose to work, how we value and protect our relationships, what we eat, how we well-being, health. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think we've been served up a very fast sort of crash course in changing for the better if we just decide to look up and take that on
and learn the lessons. Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
That's absolutely fantastic. I'm at the end of my questions. So thank you so much for that. That was amazing.
Pleasure.
Just before we go, are there any sort of social links that we can add to our bio?
Sure. So if you want to look at my sort of almost daily musings on Instagram, it's @Raoul's, which is just my first name with an S at the end. There's @Exposure London on Instagram, and then there's the Exposure website, which is exposure.net.
Fantastic. And as I said earlier, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube. Subscribe to this, and if you found this at all interesting, please share it. Thanks very much from Raoul and myself. Goodbye.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, JB. That was brilliant.